Hello friends, welcome back. Today we would be learning something very interesting, that is how to automate web scraping using Excel and macros. Yes, just using a simple Excel file, we would be trying to scrape some values from a web page. So for an example, this is the website. This is a simple calculator page. If I enter some values over here, for example 4 and 2, and click on the calculate button, I get these values. And now if I want to fetch these values in my Excel file automatically, how would I do that? So for that we would be writing an Excel macro. So before writing the macro, let me give you a demonstration of how this would actually work. So this is my Excel file, and in columns A and B I have two numbers. In column C and D I would be automatically fetching the results of addition and multiplication from this website. So let's go ahead with the demo. This is my Excel file, and now I'll just click on this button. I have already clicked. You could see in few seconds an Internet Explorer browser would come up. It has come up, and now it will enter the values which are there in the Excel sheet. You could see it is entering the values, and in the background it is fetching the values as well. Now it has quit because the browser has closed. The scraping is completed, and you could see in the columns C and D the addition and multiplication results are successfully copied. Hope you enjoyed the demo. Now let's come to the interesting part where we would be actually writing the code to achieve this scraping task. For that we'll take a fresh sheet. So in sheet 2, what I'll do, I'll just copy these headers and these numbers as well. Now we will move on to the macro window where we would be actually writing the code. So what you have to do is, from your keyboard, press the Alt key and the function key F11, Alt F11. Once you do that, you would be landing on this window. This is the macro which I had written, but don't worry, we would be rewriting it. We would be doing it from scratch. So what you have to do is, you will find something called modules over here. Do a right click, insert, select the option module. So this kind of a blank screen would come up, and this is the place where you would be actually writing the code for the web scraping. One very important point to note is, before writing your code, you have to go to tools, select references, and within references make sure that these values, Microsoft Internet Controls, Microsoft HTML Object Library, by default these two things would not be checked. You'll have to find it, like you'll have to scroll down and find these things, and you'll have to select these options. These options should be ticked, and then you'll have to click OK. I'll tell you why these things are important. Without having these things marked, your execution on the browser would not work. So this is mandatory, you have to do this. You'll have to just scroll and search for these libraries, Microsoft Internet Controls, Microsoft HTML Object Library, and just select these options and click on OK. Once you have done that, now you are in a position to start writing your code. So we'll start writing it. What you have to do is, the syntax is sub any name of your choice. This is like a function name which we generally give in any programming language. So I'm giving the name as pull data from web. Any name of your choice would do. And when you click on enter, the end sub would come by default. Now between sub and end sub, we'll write the logic which would be connecting to the website and extracting the data from there. So as a first step, what we'll do is, we'll write these 3 lines of code. I'll explain you. Here we are defining 2 objects. This is the IE object which we would use to initiate the Internet Explorer browser, and this is the doc object which I'll explain you in few minutes. And this line is very important because you are telling this object to create an instance of the Internet Explorer application. Now very important point over here, this macro would only support Microsoft Internet Explorer. It won't work on other browsers because both are Microsoft products and those are compatible with each other. So this thing would only work on the Microsoft Internet Explorer browser. So here we have already created an instance of the Internet Explorer browser. Next thing is, what I'll tell is IE dot visible is equal to true. So once this object is created, you would be able to see the browser getting launched. It would be visible to you. So I have marked this property as true. In the next step, we would be instructing this IE object to navigate. Navigate where? To the page from where we want to extract the data. In our case, this is the website. I'll show you. So this was our website. Like from here we would be pulling the data. So this thing has been mentioned over here, ie.navigate, and the URL of the web page. The next few lines are very important. I'll show you. Now this is a do while loop which we have created over here, and within the loop we have just instructed it to wait for 1 second. But wait until when? Until the browser gets ready. Now what will happen is, like when we'll be instructing the browser to navigate to this web page, it will take few seconds for this page to load correctly. So until the page gets loaded correctly, it would be within this loop and it would be waiting for the page to get correctly loaded. So this statement is very important, else it may happen that the execution would move faster and it won't wait for the page to load and you won't be able to pick up the values from the page. Now we are at a point where we would be actually interacting with the web elements. So we want to enter some values in these two text boxes, the number 1 and the number 2, and then click on this calculate button. For that I should know some of the HTML properties. So to view the HTML properties, what I am doing is I am using a Chrome browser, since I am comfortable using the Chrome browser, but you could use any browser of your choice. You could use Edge browser or a Firefox browser to see the HTML properties. But one thing to remember is although we are using the Chrome browser for extracting the properties, but the actual execution, as I told, would be performed on the Internet Explorer browser. So to view the HTML properties of this number 1 text box, what I'll do is I'll do a right click, click on inspect. Within few seconds, this window would come up. This window may come up on the right hand side as well, but you could move it as per your choice. And now if you'd see, this number 1 text box is highlighted in light blue color over here, and here I could see its ID is number 1. So in my code I would be using this ID num1. So once again I go back to the macro window, and here I would be writing a code that would be actually inserting some value in that num1 text box. The syntax goes like this. We'll use this IE object. Remember we had created this IE object in the first line. So I'm writing IE dot document dot get element by ID, and the actual ID, which was num1 dot value is equal to, for example, 4. What this line of code will do is it will search for an element whose ID is num1. In our case, num1 belongs to this text field, and what it will do is, as per our instruction, it would set its value to be 4. Now we want some value to be set on the number 2 text box. Same thing, what you could do is, like, you have this arrow kind of a marker over here, left click on it and drop your mouse on the number 2 text box. And now if you'd see, the blue, light blue highlighted line is pointing to ID is equal to number 2. So I would use num2 in my code. In the similar way, I have used num1 in this highlighted line. But if you remember, few minutes ago I told you I'll explain you why is this doc object created. We will use this doc object to populate the value in the text box number 2. The syntax goes like this, just follow me. First we'll have to use this doc object like this. Set doc is equal to, we'll use the IE object, IE dot document. So your doc object is now ready. Now I'll explain you why we have created this doc object and its advantages. So now I'll use this doc object to populate some value in the number 2 text box. So I use doc dot, and now we are getting the help from the IntelliSense. Get element by ID. If you remember, previously I had to type this entire thing. I was not getting any suggestions, so there are chances that I may make a mistake while I'm actually typing it, but with the IntelliSense the spelling mistakes won't happen and you'll be sure you're syntactically correct. So now we'll put the ID, which is num2 for the second text box. I'll close the inverted quote. Dot value may not come in this IntelliSense list, but you have to just type it, is equal to any value of your choice. I am writing in 3 over here. So you could follow either this approach where you are directly using the IE object but you will not get the IntelliSense, or you could use the doc object and you'll get the help of the IntelliSense. Both will work. So I'll just execute these lines of code to show you like what will happen when you have created this code. So I'll just placing a breakpoint over here so that the execution will stop over here and you are able to see what actually happens. To execute it, I'm clicking on this green arrow on the top. I clicked on it. Within few seconds the browser will come up. It has come up. Now it will start entering the values, and now you could see it has entered value 3 in the first text box, entered value 4 in the first text box and 3 in the second text box, which was expected. You could see num1 should be populated with 4, num2 should be populated with value 3. On this Internet Explorer browser we have achieved this. Now our next step would be to actually click on this calculate button. So once again I'll go to this macro window, stop the execution, I'll close this browser, and now I'll start writing the code to click on the button. So for clicking on the button we need the properties of this calculate button. Once again I take my mouse over to this arrow, left click and drop it on the calculate button, and now you could see the ID of this button is btn calculate, which will use it in our code. Just copy it. Now it's very simple. Doc dot get element by ID, open inverted quotes, close inverted quotes, within the inverted quotes the ID, the actual ID, which is btn calculate in our case. This time we are not setting the value, we have to perform a click, so we are writing click. So what will happen is like this, will click on the calculate button, we'll get some values over here, and now we want to fetch these values. So to fetch the result of addition, once again I'll take my mouse pointer over here, drop it on the result of addition, which is showing me as 6, and if you'd see its ID is lbl add. I'll just copy this, I'll use it in the code like this. Doc dot get element by ID, the actual ID within double inverted quotes, inner text. So when this line of code will get executed, we have pulled in the value which would be present over here. What we'll do is we'll store this value in a variable. I am using stradd is equal to, you could use any variable of a choice to store this value. Similarly, we need the value of multiplication. So I go over here, do a right click, inspect, and now I see its ID is lbl mult and there is some class. Now what we'll do is we'll not use ID, because you may come across a situation where the HTML does not have IDs. So if you do not have IDs and still you want to extract the value, how you would do that? So in this case we'll use this class. The class is CLS-LBL. Now one thing, if you would see the class of these rest of the fields, like for example the addition result, the class is same, CLS-LBL. Similarly the subtraction result, if I inspect it, again the class is LBL. So we'll be using the class LBL, but we'll have to make sure along with the class label something else we'll have to provide, because all these results have the same class. So the syntax goes like this. We'll go into the code and the code would be dot get elements by class name. If you remember, we are using this class attributes, because of which in the code we have used get elements by class name. One very important point here, if you see, it is get element, and here it is get elements, which means plural. And here within double inverted quotes, whatever is the class, in our case the name of the class is CLSLBL, so we'll mention it over here, LBL. But as I told you, there are other elements which have the same class, so along with the class name we would provide its index. The index over here is, this is the first, second and the third, but internally it starts from 0, so this would be 0, 1 and 2. So the result of multiplication would be stored in index 2 of class CLSLBL. So in the code we have already mentioned class as CLSLBL. Now for the index, what you have to do is open a round bracket, put the index number, which is 2 in our case, close it, dot in a text. Now once again store this in a variable. I have created this variable strmult, strmult, so this would store the value of multiplication. So at this stage we are able to capture the values. Now our intention is that we have to capture these values and insert it in our Excel file. This is our Excel file, and we want to insert these values in the columns C and D respectively. So that is very easy. The code for that goes like this. This workbook dot sheets, here within brackets, within double inverted quotes, we have to provide the sheet name. In our case the sheet name is sheet 2 dot range. We have to insert the value in column C, row number 2, so we have mentioned C2 over here. Dot value is equal to stradd. So whatever is present in stradd would be inserted in C2 of sheet 2. Similarly, for the result of multiplication, the syntax would remain as is. I'm just copying this line, pasting it over here. C2 would get replaced with D2, and here we want to use the strmult because strmult is storing the result of multiplication. So let's execute these lines of code and see what happens. Right now you could see the columns C and D for row number 2 is empty. And now I am executing it. I am clicking on this green button on the top. The internet browser has been launched, and now it has entered the values 4 and 3. And now if you see in our spreadsheet, you could see it has correctly populated the values 7 and 12. Now you must be wondering, here the values are 5 and 4, but the addition is showing 7 and 12. Why is this happening? Because here we have hard coded the values and 3 and 4. You could see the highlighted lines. The first text box is filled with value 4, the second text box is filled with value 3, because of which it is showing me the result as 7 rather than 9 and 20. So what I'll do is, in my code, I'll not hard code this, but I'll pick up these values from the respective columns. So here I'll pick up the value from column A and B. The code is very simple. It is exactly like this. So once again I'm just copying this, and now I'm replacing 4 with this value, but remember the range would be A2 because it is coming from column A, and this would be B2. Fine. And now if I'll execute, I am closing this browser, and now if I'll execute, let's see what happens. Once again I am clicking on this green button on the top. The browser has been launched. Now if you would see, it has entered number 1 as 5, number 2 as 4, and the respective values have been calculated. Let's move back to our spreadsheet, and now you could see it is showing the addition is 5 plus 4 is equal to 9 and multiplication is 20. So up till now we have successfully fetched the values from the web page, but now we have only fetched the value for the first row. We need the values for all the rows. For that we'll have to do some changes in the code. It is pretty simple. We'll just use a for loop to achieve it. The syntax goes like this. So at this point we are entering the first value, so we'll place a for loop before this line like this. For any variable name of your choice, I'm giving the name as int row is equal to 2, because we are picking up the values from row number 2. Row number 1 we have just the headers, so I am starting from row number 2. Next is we have to write TO to the end row number. We are ending at row number 5, so I'm just mentioning 5 over here, and all these lines of code would be within the for loop up till here, because here we are entering the values into a spreadsheet, and after the last line I would put a next. This is the syntax of a for loop. So whatever lines are present over here would get repeated 4 times from row number 2 to 4. So one small change which we need to do over here is, if you see, all these values range A2, B2, C2 and D2 are hard coded. The column would remain the same, but each time the row index should increase. So the for loop would take care of increasing the index, and the variable which will get increased each iteration is intro. So we'll use this intro variable like this. It is pretty simple. I'm removing this 2 from here, which was hard coded, and replacing it with an ampersand, which is the concatenation operator, and intro. So the value of intro would keep on incrementing. After each iteration it will be 2, 3, 4 and 5. So each time a different value will get picked up. Similar changes we will need to do for all the statements where we have hard coded the row number. So here, similarly here, finally the last line. So our loop is ready now. What I'll do is I'll put some delay here just before we are moving on to the next iteration, so that when it is executing it would be easier for us to view it. So I've introduced some delay over here, and now we'll execute it. So before executing, I'll show you here on the spreadsheet. I'm removing this 9 and 20, and all the cells of C and D are blank right now. I'm closing this Internet Explorer browser, and now I'm clicking on this green button to get the execution done. Let's see what happens. You could see the browser has launched. It has entered 5, 4, which was there in the first row, now the second row, the third row, and finally the last row. And now if you see our spreadsheet, let's see what happened. You could see all the values have been copied correctly over here. If you want to test it, you could just change some values. I'm putting 4 and 4 over here, 3 and 8 over here, and once again I'll execute. I'm closing this browser, going back to my code, and now I click on this green button. Once again the browser would get launched and the values would be populated. You could see it is happening. It is completed. If you come over here and now see, the values for row number 3 and 4 are correctly updated. It is showing the correct addition and multiplication. In this tutorial we extracted the values of addition and multiplication. For your practice you could try for subtraction and division, and if you have any issues you could let me know. Just few steps before closing this tutorial. what we have to do is we have to place a button, which is pretty simple to do. What you have to do is on the spreadsheet, within the developer tab, you could see something called insert. Click on it, select within the form controls this button, left click anywhere on the spreadsheet, and this kind of a button would come up. You have to link this button with the sub you have written. The name of our sub was pull data from web, so I'm selecting this option, clicking on OK. If you could see, the name of our sub was pull data from web. So we have linked this sub with the button over here. You could just resize the button, and you could change the label of the button as well. So I'm just mentioning click. And what else you can do is, like, once your execution is done, you could quit the browser, so that the browser would get automatically closed, and you could give a message so that we'll come to know that the execution is completed. I am just writing as done, and here once again I'll change few values. And now when I click this button, see what happens. See, the same operations are getting performed, and you would see on the Excel the values have changed for the first row, and now it has given me the message as done, and you could see the new values have come. So this is how we automate web scraping using simple Excel macros. It is very simple, you just need to do a bit of practice. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. If you like my videos, I request you to please subscribe to my channel so that you would be updated with the latest videos I would be uploading. Guys, thanks for joining. I'll join you soon. Goodbye.